The words came through my phone speaker like ice water. Mom, we're not running a charity here. My son David didn't know that 6 hours earlier, at exactly 9:47 that morning, I'd sat in my lawyer's office and signed the papers that moved every single dollar out of his reach. Every single one. My name is Margaret, but everyone calls me Maggie. I'm sitting here today at 67 years old, and I need to tell you this story because I know some of you out there might be going through something similar. So before we begin, drop a comment and let me know. Where are you watching this from? I'd love to know I'm not alone in this. Now, let me take you back to how this all started, because the truth is, it didn't begin with that phone call. It began 35 years ago when I first held my son, David, in my arms and promised him the world. I kept that promise. God help me. I kept it over and over again. My husband Richard and I weren't wealthy, not by a long shot. Richard worked as an electrical engineer and I taught third grade for 23 years. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom house in Ohio, drove sensible cars and clipped coupons every Sunday morning over coffee. But we had something more valuable than money. We had a plan and we had discipline. Every month, Richard would sit at our kitchen table with the checkbook and we'd put away whatever we could. Some months it was $50. Some months, when things were tight, it was $15. But we never missed a month, not once in 32 years of marriage. We had 2 children. David came first, and then 3 years later, our daughter Jennifer. I love them both with everything in me. I still do, even now. But love, I've learned, doesn't always go both ways, at least not the way you'd hope. David was always ambitious. Even as a little boy, he'd talk about living in a big house and driving expensive cars. I thought it was adorable then. I'd ruffle his hair and tell him, "Dream big, sweetheart. Your dad and I will help you get there." And we did help. When David got into Ohio State, we paid every penny of his tuition, $43,000 over 4 years. We had it saved, every cent accounted for in that college fund we'd been building since he was in diapers. Richard was so proud the day we wrote that first check. "This is what we worked for, Maggie," he said to me, "this right here." Jennifer was different, quieter, more practical. She got a partial scholarship to nursing school, and we covered the rest, another $28,000. We were happy to do it. That's what parents do, right? You give your children the opportunities you never had. After college, David got a job at a marketing firm in Columbus. He was doing well, making decent money, but he wanted more. He came to us with a business plan. He wanted to start his own digital marketing company. He needed $60,000 for startup costs. Remember sitting at that same kitchen table where Richard used to do the budget, looking at our retirement account statements. We were 54 and 57 then. The $60,000 was a big chunk of what we'd saved. "Mom, Dad, this is my shot," David had said, his eyes bright with that same ambitious fire I'd seen since he was 5 years old. "I'll pay you back with interest, I promise." Richard and I talked about it for a week. In the end, we gave him the money, not a loan, a gift. "Consider it your inheritance early," Richard told him. "Build something you're proud of." David's company did well, really well. Within 5 years, he had 12 employees and was pulling in 7 figures annually. He bought a house in a gated community, married a woman named Stephanie who wore designer clothes and got her nails done every week. They had 2 kids, our grandchildren, Tyler and Emma. Beautiful children. I barely know them. I remember the first time I visited that house. It was 2 years after they'd moved in. David had been putting off my visits. "We're still settling in, Mom," he'd said over and over. When I finally got the invitation, I was so excited I could barely sleep the night before. The house was enormous, over 4,000 square feet sitting behind an iron gate in a development where every lawn looked identical. Stephanie gave me a tour, her heels clicking on the marble floors. Everything was white and gray and perfectly staged, like a furniture showroom. Not a toy out of place, not a crayon mark on any wall, not a single photo that looked like it had been taken by anyone who actually loved the people in it. "We just had the living room professionally photographed for a magazine feature," Stephanie told me, gesturing to a room I was pretty sure no one was allowed to sit in. Tyler and Emma barely spoke during dinner. They sat up straight at the table, using proper utensils, asking to be excused when they were finished. They were 7 and 5. They should have been messy and giggly and spilling things. Instead, they acted like tiny adults at a business dinner. After that visit, the invitations stopped coming. I'd call to ask about coming for holidays, and there was always a reason why it wouldn't work. They were traveling. Stephanie's parents were visiting. They had commitments. The house was being renovated. Always something. Jennifer married a good man named Paul, a high school teacher. They had one daughter, Chloe. They lived simply, saved carefully, and never asked us for anything more than we'd already given. Jennifer called me every Sunday. She'd tell me about Chloe's soccer games and Paul's students, and she'd always ask how I was doing. Really ask, not just the polite version of asking. When Richard got sick, everything changed. It was pancreatic cancer. They caught it late, stage 4. We had 8 months from diagnosis to the day I held his hand while he took his last breath. 8 months that cost us $240,000, even with insurance. We had to sell our house. The house where we'd raised our babies. The house where Richard had sat at that kitchen table every month for 3 decades. But Richard had been smart. Years earlier, he'd taken out a life insurance policy. A big one. $500,000. Just in case, Maggie, he'd told me when he bought it, I want to make sure you're taken care of. When Richard died, I was 64 years old, living in a small apartment, and suddenly I had money in the bank. More money than I'd ever had at once in my entire life. After paying off the last of the medical bills and the funeral expenses, I had $470,000. But here's the thing about grief. Money doesn't soften it. Not even a little bit. I'd wake up at 3 in the morning reaching for Richard's hand, and the empty space beside me felt like a wound that wouldn't heal. I'd make coffee in the morning and automatically pour 2 cups before remembering. I'd see something funny on TV and turn to share it with him, only to find myself talking to an empty room. The apartment was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. I started leaving the TV on all day just for the noise. I'd go to the grocery store and buy Richard's favorite foods out of habit, then stand in my kitchen staring at them, wondering what I was supposed to do now. I was surrounded by all this money and absolutely drowning in loneliness. David called me 3 days after the funeral, not to see how I was doing, to ask about the life insurance. So, Mom, I heard Dad had a pretty substantial policy. That's great, really great. You're all set now, right? All set. As if money could replace 40 years of marriage. As if a check could fill the space in my bed where Richard used to sleep. But I didn't say that. I just told him yes, I'd be okay financially. That's such a relief, he'd said. Stephanie and I were worried. Hey, listen, I've been meaning to talk to you about this business opportunity. There's this commercial property that just came on the market, and I'd cut him off. David, I just buried your father 3 days ago. Right, of course. Sorry, Mom, bad timing. We'll talk later. We didn't talk later. In fact, over the next 2 years, I heard from David maybe 6 times. Birthdays, holidays, always brief, always polite. Always with Stephanie in the background saying they needed to get going. Jennifer, on the other hand, came to visit me every other weekend. She'd bring Chloe, and we'd bake cookies or watch old movies. She never asked about the money, not once. I tried to be involved with David's family. I'd call to ask about Tyler and Emma's activities. I'd send birthday gifts and Christmas presents. Sometimes Stephanie would text back a thank you with a generic emoji. Sometimes I'd hear nothing at all. Last year, I made a decision. I wanted to give both my kids something substantial while I was still alive to see them enjoy it. I called them both and told them I was giving them each $100,000. Jennifer cried. Actual tears. Mom, are you sure? This is too much. I'm sure, honey. Use it for Chloe's college fund or take a family vacation or just put it away for a rainy day. It's yours. David's response was different. Wow, that's generous, Mom, really generous. Hey, you know what? This is perfect timing. Stephanie and I were just talking about renovating the kitchen. This'll cover most of it. $100,000 for a kitchen renovation. I didn't say anything. After I gave them that money, something shifted in me. Maybe it was turning 67. Maybe it was spending another year alone in my small apartment, eating dinner by myself every night. watching TV shows Richard would have hated. But I started to feel this deep, aching loneliness that I couldn't shake. I'd wake up in the morning and think, is this it? Is this all there is now? My apartment was quiet. Too quiet. The walls were beige, the carpet was beige, everything was beige and still and empty. I'd go days without speaking to another person except the checkout clerk at the grocery store. I started thinking about what it would be like to be around family again, to hear children laughing, to sit at a dinner table with more than one plate on it. The loneliness was becoming unbearable. I'd see families at the grocery store, mothers with their adult children, grandparents holding little hands, and I'd have to leave the store before I started crying in the cereal aisle. I had 2 children, 4 grandchildren, and I was spending my days alone in a beige apartment watching game shows. This wasn't what Richard and I had worked for. This wasn't what we'd saved for. We'd built that nest egg so I could have a good life, not so I could sit alone counting my money like some modern-day Scrooge. I looked at my bank statements and felt sick. What was the point of having nearly $500,000 if I was going to die alone and miserable? You can't take it with you. Richard used to say that all the time. And he was right. So 3 months ago, I made a decision. I'd ask if I could come stay with one of my kids for just a week, maybe help out with the grandkids, cook some meals, just be part of a family again for a little while. 1 week. That's all I wanted. 7 days to feel like I belonged somewhere. I thought carefully about who to ask first. Jennifer and Paul's house was small, a 3-bedroom ranch. With Chloe and the 2 of them, they didn't have a spare room. David and Stephanie, on the other hand, lived in a 5-bedroom house. 5 bedrooms for 4 people. Surely they could spare one for a week, but I didn't want to impose. So I decided I needed to make sure my finances were properly in order first. I wanted to have everything documented, everything clear, just in case anything happened to me while I was visiting. I called my lawyer, Thomas Walsh, a man Richard and I had used for years. Tom, I said, I need to update some things. Can I come in? We set an appointment for a Tuesday morning. I got there at 9:30, and for the next hour and a half, Tom and I went through everything. My will, my accounts, my assets. Tom, I said finally, I want to set up a trust. I want to make sure that if anything happens to me, Jennifer gets 65% and David gets 35%. Tom looked at me over his reading glasses. That's quite a disparity, Maggie. Are you sure? I'm sure. And Tom, I want to move all my liquid assets into an account that only I control. No beneficiaries, no joint access, nothing, not until the trust executes. That's unusual, he said. May I ask why? I thought about how to answer that. Finally, I said, let's just call it a precaution. It took 2 hours to complete all the paperwork. By 11:47 that morning, every dollar I had, the remainder of Richard's life insurance, my own savings, everything, was in a new account, an account that only I could touch. I sat in my car in the parking garage afterward, my hands shaking a little. I'm not sure why I was shaking. Some part of me knew, I think. Some part of me knew what was coming. That afternoon, I picked up my phone and called David. He answered on the 4th ring. I could hear voices in the background, laughter. Hey, Mom, what's up? Hi, sweetheart. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. Nah, just having some people over. Backyard barbecue thing. What do you need? What do you need? Not, how are you? What do you need? Well, I said, trying to keep my voice light, I was thinking it might be nice to come visit you all for a bit. Maybe a week. I could help out with Tyler and Emma and... Hold on, Mom. His voice got muffled, like he'd put his hand over the phone. I could hear him talking to Stephanie, though I couldn't make out the words. He came back on. Yeah, so, the thing is, Mom, we've got a pretty busy schedule coming up. Tyler's got soccer camp, Emma's got piano, and Stephanie's mother is actually planning to visit in a few weeks, so... I could come after that? I offered. I'm flexible. Anytime that works for you all. Another pause. More muffled conversation. Look, Mom, I'm going to be straight with you. Having house guests is just... It's a lot, you know? Stephanie likes things a certain way, and with the kids' schedules and work and everything, it's just not a great time. Something cold settled in my chest. David, I'm not a house guest. I'm your mother. I know, Mom, but I'm asking for 1 week, just 7 days with my son and my grandchildren. His voice changed then, got harder. Mom, look, we're not running a charity here, okay? We've got our own lives, our own routines. I can't just drop everything because you're feeling lonely or whatever. Maybe you should look into some activities at the senior center or something. The senior center. I was 67 years old. I'd given this man every opportunity I could afford. I'd given him my savings for his business. I'd given him $100,000 a year ago for a kitchen renovation. And now I was asking for a week, 1 single week, to be part of his family, and he was telling me to go to the senior center. David, I said quietly, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Mom, I really need to get back to my guests. This morning, I continued, my voice steady now, at 9:47 a.m., I sat in my lawyer's office and transferred every asset I have into an account that only I can access. The $100,000 I gave you last year, that's the last money you'll ever see from me. The inheritance you were probably counting on? I've restructured my will. Silence. Mom, what are you? I'm not finished. I spent 35 years putting you first. I paid for your education. I funded your business. I gave you everything I could give you. And you just told me that asking to spend 1 week with my grandchildren is too much of an imposition because you're not running a charity. Mom, wait, I didn't mean... The charity, David, was me. I was the charity. For your entire life, I gave and gave and gave. And now I'm done. Mom, come on, you're being ridiculous. I'll be calling Jennifer now. Goodbye, David. I hung up before he could say another word. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I sat there in my beige apartment looking at my phone, and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Power. Clarity. I called Jennifer. She answered on the first ring. Hey, Mom, perfect timing. Chloe and I were just talking about you. We're making your famous chocolate chip cookies, and we couldn't remember if you use salted or unsalted butter. Just like that. Just easiness. Love. The way family should be. Unsalted, I said, and my voice cracked a little. Mom, are you okay? And suddenly I was crying. Not sad crying. Something else. Relief, maybe. Or grief for all the years I'd spent hoping David would turn into someone he was never going to be. Mom, what's wrong? Do you need me to come over? No, baby, I said. Actually, I was calling to ask you something. Would it be okay if I came to stay with you and Paul for a week? I know you don't have much space, and I don't want to impose... Mom, stop. Of course you can come. When? Are you sure? I know the house is small. Mom, you could sleep on the couch for all I care. We'd love to have you. When do you want to come? I started crying harder. How about this weekend? Perfect, Chloe, Grandma's coming to stay. I heard Chloe's excited squeal in the background. Mom, she's so excited. Paul's going to be thrilled. He keeps saying we don't see you enough. We talked for another 20 minutes. Easy, flowing conversation. She told me about Paul's new position as department chair, about Chloe making the honor roll, about their cat learning to open cupboard doors, normal things, family things. After we hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and felt peace for the first time in months. My phone rang 15 minutes later. David. I didn't answer. He called again and again. 4 calls in 30 minutes. Finally, a text. Mom, I think we got our wires crossed. Of course you can come visit. Stephanie and I would love to have you. I didn't respond. Another text, 10 minutes later. Mom, please call me back. I'm sorry if I sounded harsh. You caught me at a bad time. Obviously, you're always welcome here. Then, an hour later. Mom, I'm worried about what you said about your accounts and your will. Can we please talk about this like adults? There it was. He wasn't sorry about telling me to go to the senior center. He was worried about the money. I turned my phone off. That weekend, I packed a bag and drove to Jennifer's house. It's only 40 minutes away, but I'd only been there a handful of times in the past year. I'd always told myself they were busy, that I didn't want to intrude. When I pulled up, Chloe was already running out the front door. Grandma, she threw her arms around me, and I held her tight. Paul came out next, grinning. Maggie, let me get your bag. We cleared out the craft room for you. It's small, but it's got a bed and a window, and Chloe made you a welcome sign. That week was everything I'd hoped for and more. I woke up to the smell of coffee brewing. I helped Chloe with her homework at the kitchen table. I taught her how to make Richard's famous spaghetti sauce. Paul and I watched baseball games in the evening while Jennifer and Chloe worked on a puzzle. We played board games. We laughed. We were a family. On Monday, Chloe asked me to walk her to the school bus stop. Just the two of us, hand in hand, talking about her science project on the solar system. When the bus came, she hugged me goodbye like it was the most natural thing in the world. Tuesday, I helped Paul grade papers while he told me funny stories about his students. He asked my opinion on things, listened to my answers like they mattered. Wednesday, Jennifer let me come with her to the grocery store, and we took our time walking the aisles, not because we were in a hurry to get home to emptiness, but because we were enjoying each other's company. We laughed about old family stories, debated which pasta sauce to buy, acted like mothers and daughters should act. Thursday night, we all piled onto the couch together to watch a movie. Me, Jennifer, Paul, and Chloe. Chloe fell asleep with her head on my shoulder. I sat there, feeling her breathe, feeling like I was exactly where I belonged. This was what family was supposed to feel like. If you're enjoying this story, and if you want to hear more stories like this one, hit that subscribe button. You won't regret it. On the third day of my visit, Jennifer and I were sitting on her back porch while Chloe played with the neighbors' kids in the yard. "Mom," Jennifer said quietly, "David's been calling me." I figured he might. "He's pretty upset. He says you're being irrational. He says you threatened to cut him out of your will over a misunderstanding." I took a sip of my iced tea. "What do you think?" Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. "I think David's been taking you for granted for a very long time, and I think you finally had enough. He told me you weren't running a charity when I asked to visit for a week." Jennifer's jaw tightened. "He said that? Those words exactly?" "Those words exactly. Mom, I'm so sorry." "Don't be sorry, honey. It wasn't you." I reached over and squeezed her hand. "Can I tell you something?" "Of course." "Last year, when I gave you and David each $100,000, do you know what he spent it on?" "He mentioned something about a kitchen renovation." "A kitchen renovation. Jennifer, you put yours in a college fund for Chloe. You used some of it to fix Paul's car. You used it for things that mattered. David spent $100,000 on marble countertops and designer appliances." Jennifer didn't say anything. "I'm not cutting David out completely," I continued. "He'll still inherit something, but the bulk of everything, the money Richard and I saved, the life insurance, all of it, it's going to go to you, because you've shown me what family actually means." "Mom, you don't have to." "I want to. You've earned it, honey. Not because you were trying to earn it, but because you loved me without expecting anything in return." We sat there in the quiet afternoon, watching Chloe play. I felt more at home on Jennifer's back porch than I'd felt in my own apartment in 2 years. By the end of the week, I'd made a decision. I didn't want to go back to that beige apartment. I didn't want to be alone anymore. "Jennifer," I said the night before I was supposed to leave, "what would you think about me moving in with you all? Permanently?" Jennifer looked at Paul. Something passed between them, one of those wordless conversations that long married couples have. "We've actually been talking about that," Paul said. "The craft room is yours if you want it, Maggie. We'd love to have you here." I started crying again, the good kind of crying. "But," Jennifer added, "we're not taking rent money from you. You're family, not a tenant." "How about I pay for groceries?" I offered. "And I can help with Chloe after school? Give you two some time together?" "Deal," Paul said, reaching over to hug me. I moved in 2 weeks later. David called me 37 times during those 2 weeks. I answered once, on a Tuesday afternoon. "Mom, thank God, I've been so worried." "Have you, David?" "Of course I have. Mom, I'm so sorry about what I said. I was stressed. I wasn't thinking clearly. Stephanie and I have been talking, and we really want you to come stay with us for however long you want." "That's generous of you." "So you'll come. We can pick you up this weekend." "David, I'm not coming. I'm moving in with Jennifer and Paul." Silence. "You're... what?" "I'm moving in with your sister. I asked her if I could stay for a week, and by day 3, they invited me to move in permanently. That's what family does, David. They make room." "Mom, that's not fair. You didn't even give me a chance to..." "I gave you a chance. I gave you 35 years of chances. I gave you every opportunity, every dollar I could spare. And when I asked for 1 week of your time, you told me you weren't running a charity. I said I was sorry. David, you're sorry you might lose your inheritance. You're not sorry you hurt me. That's not true, isn't it? Tell me, when was the last time you called me just to see how I was doing? Not to ask for something, not because it was a holiday, but just because you wanted to talk to your mother. He couldn't answer. That's what I thought. David, I love you. I will always love you, but I'm done giving you pieces of myself while getting nothing back. So you're punishing me by giving everything to Jennifer? I'm not punishing you, I'm rewarding her. There's a difference. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line. How much am I getting? From the will? And there it was, the only thing he really cared about. Enough to know I kept my promises to you, I said, but not enough to retire on. You'll get about 35% of my estate. Jennifer gets the rest. 35%? Mom, that's not fair. I'm your son. And Jennifer is my daughter who showed up. The math seems fair to me. Stephanie's not going to believe this. Give Stephanie my regards, I said. Goodbye, David. I hung up and blocked his number. That was 3 months ago. I live with Jennifer, Paul, and Chloe now. My room is small, but it's mine. I've painted it a soft yellow that reminds me of sunshine. I have photos of Richard on the dresser, and every morning I wake up to the sound of my family moving around the house. I make breakfast on weekends. I help Chloe with her algebra homework. Even though I have to watch YouTube videos to remember how to do it, I have dinner with people I love every single night. The difference between my old life and this one is like night and day. In that beige apartment, I could go 3 days without saying more than thank you to a cashier. Here, I can't go 3 minutes without someone asking me a question or telling me a story, or just sitting down next to me because they want to be near me. Last Tuesday, Chloe came home upset about something a girl said to her at school. She didn't go to her room. She didn't text her friends. She came and found me in the kitchen, and we talked for an hour while I taught her how to make snickerdoodles. That's what I was missing. That's what David's money could never buy. Jennifer and I have coffee together every morning before she leaves for her nursing shift. Paul and I have a standing Tuesday night chess game. Chloe and I are working our way through all the classic movies she's never seen. Last week was The Princess Bride, and she loved it. I'm not lonely anymore. David sent a letter about a month ago, not to me, to Jennifer, asking her to talk sense into Mom. Jennifer showed it to me, and we both just shook our heads. Last week, Stephanie called Jennifer. She wanted to know if I was mentally competent and whether I'd been unduly influenced to change my will. Jennifer told her that I was sharp as a tack and making my own decisions, and then she hung up. I don't hate David. I'm not even angry anymore. I'm just done. Done giving to people who only know how to take. The money I worked so hard to save, the life Richard and I built, it's going to go to the person who valued me, not the person who valued what I could give them. Some people might think I'm being too harsh. Maybe David really was just having a bad day when I called. Maybe he didn't mean it the way it sounded. But here's what I've learned at 67 years old. People show you who they are in the small moments. When David thought I was just his lonely mother asking for a favor, he showed me exactly how much space I took up in his life. None. When you give someone every advantage, every opportunity, every dollar you can spare, and they still can't give you a week of their time, that tells you everything you need to know. It's not about the money. It's never been about the money. It's about being seen, being valued, being loved for who you are, not what you can provide. I gave David his shot at success. I gave him education capital and $100,000 for marble countertops. What I needed from him cost nothing, just room at his table, time with my grandchildren, the simple acknowledgement that I mattered to him beyond what I could give. He couldn't even give me that. But when I asked Jennifer if I could stay, she said yes before I could even finish the sentence. That's the difference. That's why I'm here, in Jennifer's house, in my yellow room with photos of Richard smiling at me from the dresser. That's why my will is structured the way it is. And that's why when David finally realizes that I'm sorry without changed behavior is just noise, it'll be too late. I don't owe anyone access to my life or my money just because we share DNA. I earned every dollar Richard and I saved. I get to decide where it goes, and I've decided it goes to the people who made room for me at their table.